Well, here we are in Houston, Texas, and it is with great pleasure and honor that I welcome Jim Bergman, a friend of mine and a fellow comrade in the Wolfhounds in Vietnam during 1969. And Jim, we're here today to talk a little bit about your life and a little bit about your service in Vietnam. So just to get it started, I'd like to ask you, where were you born and raised?
I was born and raised in Blanco County, Texas, and raised in Round Mountain, Texas, which is a little bitty place. If you blink, you missed it.
Okay. And tell us a little bit about your folks and your family. When you were growing up.
My folks were ranchers, and we lived on a ranch, and that's pretty well it. My grandfather on my father's side was the blacksmith there in Johnson City, and my mother's folks, the place that I grew up was her old home place, and all of her kinfolks settled that country in the 1800s. In fact, several of the people that were kinfolks of ours fought the last Indian battle in
For
that
heaven's
country.
sake. Yeah, it goes way back.
Way back.
And did you have any siblings, any brothers or sisters?
I had two sisters,
Okay. And what were their names?
Mary Jane and Bonnie.
And are they still,
They're both still alive, yes.
are they Texans?
Yes, they are.
Still in Texas, good. And let me ask you this. When you graduated high school,
That's correct.
and was the draft or military even in your vision at that point? Were you thinking in terms of, well, there's this something going on in Vietnam, and did you go to college?
I did go 2 semesters to college, and of course, not being wealthy, I had to lay out to work to go back to school.
And guess what happened between that
Yeah,
time? Same thing that happened to me.
Yeah, it was one of those greetings from the President of the United States, you're the winner.
Yep.
But
What were your feelings about that?
well, it was shock.
Yeah.
It really was, but I was brought up to do what was supposed to be done, and even though it was not what I intended to do with my life at the time, I went ahead and went.
What'd your dad say when you told him?
He didn't have much to say. His youngest brother fought in World War II, and some of his brother-in-laws fought in World War II, and it just seemed like the right thing to do.
Yeah.
If you were called, you went.
Yeah. And how old were you at the time?
I was 20 years old.
Okay. And at the time, what kind of work were you doing to try to make up some money to go back to college?
I was a welder, and I welded for a while, and then I hauled bulk mail as a truck driver.
Okay, yeah. And where did you go to basic training?
I went to basic training in El Paso,
And that was
Fort Bliss.
Fort Bliss, yeah. And I'd like you to just think back to when you actually had to show up, and then did they fly you or bus you, or how did you actually get there?
My induction station was in San Antonio.
Okay.
And we went in and were inducted there, and then they took us to the airport and flew us to El Paso.
Okay.
And I don't know how I got chosen, except maybe I was the oldest one in the bunch and all, to carry everybody's records out there and turn them in when we got to the induction station.
Okay, tell me a little bit about that.
Well,
How about take the first week that you're on the fort?
Well,
Tell me what you remember about that.
I remember taking all of the battery of exams and all this, to what your MOS would possibly come out being, and I scored high enough that they offered me OCS on it, and but the catch was that you had to re-enlist for a certain length of time.
At least a couple of years.
And I said thanks, but no thanks. went ahead and, and went in like everybody else.
Yeah, but still, you didn't know what your MOS was going to be.
No,
And I'll bet in the back of your mind you're thinking, I must have scored high enough somewhere in that test that surely I'm going to get to go to some school.
yeah, well.
Is that right though? Did you think that?
You thought,
Sure.
you know, if they offered you this, well,
Yeah.
you know, but the funny thing about it, of course, it wasn't really funny, but the funny, strange thing about it was in my basic training company, nearly everyone that ended up with a combat MOS, either 11 Bravo or 11 Charlie, every one of them had some college.
Yeah. Which brought up an interesting talking point later on.
Yeah.
When we were in Vietnam and they said they only send idiots and dumb people to the infantry.
Yeah.
And I, you know, it's funny you bring that up because I actually did a little survey of the platoon,
Mhm.
and the majority of guys had some college.
Yes.
So, and I always thought that, you know, they put people out there in the front lines that can think.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can't not be able to make a decision or,
No,
or think.
you're in trouble.
You know.
Yes.
So, okay, what was training like? Do you remember the name of your first drill sergeant?
I do not. I'm the world's worst. There's lots of things that I don't remember.
Okay.
You know.
And was the fort an older fort, like the barracks? Were they older, two-story wooden?
They were actually, no, ours were cinder block
Okay.
building and pretty nice, really. And of course, like I guess where most basic training places, you know, each company had their own company area,
Yes.
their own drill
Yeah.
field, and their low crawl pits and
Yeah.
and horizontal ladders and all of that stuff. And I must admit, back in those days, the drill sergeant was God, you know, and he whatever he told you to do, you better do it.
Yeah. Did you get along okay in basic? No
Oh
prob-
yeah, I did.
No
I
problems?
did quite well. I was lucky enough that when I graduated from basic, I picked up my first strike.
Oh yeah. Okay, so you had to be at the top of your
And,
class to be able to do that.
When I carried the stuff to AIT
Mm-hmm.
and all. They flew.
Did you stay at Bliss for AIT?
No, I did not. I went to Fort Ord, California, on the Monterey Peninsula.
That was where I was at.
Cold, God, that place was
That
cold.
Damp and
Yes, and our rifle ranges were on the beach,
Yep.
and you could only fire up until about 5 o'clock because between 5 and 6, the fog rolled in. You
Sure.
couldn't see your 25-meter targets
Yep.
even.
What was the date? I forgot to ask you. When did you get inducted?
I was inducted in July '69.
Okay.
I was in country December '69.
Okay.
I was out of country November '70.
So you
I did a full tour.
Yeah, I was just going to say that sounds like a year to me.
Yes.
Yeah. So AIT, they treated you a little different.
Oh yes. Yes, and
all of a sudden-
we got some leave time. We got some weekends off.
Yep, I remember that too. Yep. And so what were they teaching in AIT?
They basically taught us tactics for Vietnam, and all. We booby traps and crack thud. You remember?
Yes, I do.
And things like that. And
And
learn-
you were, of course, using M16s.
We converted from M14s in basic to 16s.
Now
and
that's interesting because in basic when I was there, of course, I was there August of '68.
Mhm.
March of '68 is when I was at Fort Ord. I went
Yep.
basic and AIT there. It was M14.
Yeah.
And so this is an interesting thing too because the Army had already been in Vietnam in gunfights and they were still using M14s
Mhm.
and they were training us on M14s knowing
that you're going to switch.
So we weren't introduced to the M16 until AIT about 2 weeks in, and then
Yeah.
they had to change. They had to change everything. You know, everything had to be different at that point. But I really I liked the M16.
I was afraid of the M16. I never had a lot of faith in the gun. I saw a bunch of them quit when they shouldn't have quit, and of course, what we had the old type M16s,
Right.
and that had the 3-prong
Oh yes,
flash suppressors,
the open, yeah, flash suppressor.
and that kind of thing. Used it to open C-ration boxes and things like that. But
Do you know why they did away with those open flash suppressors?
no, I never.
In Vietnam, remember when we'd be traipsing through the swamp or the jungle or that was a perfect thing to catch weeds and debris.
And
And if
lost
you
too many
didn't-
ends of barrel.
And if you didn't catch it, you know, if all of a sudden you shot, it was a better than average chance that you just opened up the end of that barrel. So
Oh, yeah.
they did learn, you know, from that. Unfortunately, they didn't think that, you know,
Yeah.
through, I'm sure.
I always was a tinkerer, and I was a gunsmith of
Okay.
sorts. You know, I knew a lot about
Like to
weapons.
take them apart. And,
I knew, and Rock is left-handed when it comes to shooting.
okay.
And he was shooting a 16 left-handed. Well, of course, back then, the 16s did not have the shell deflector on.
Right. They just
And,
flew.
and
right-
he was burned always, you know. So he was talking about it one day, and I see
Oh
a
man.
casing burn
Oh, wow.
on his neck, and I said, you know, I think I can fix that for you. And I took a C-ration can and built him a shell
I'll
deflector
be darned.
and put it on the carrying handle of his M16,
Wow.
and he carried that the rest of the time.
That was a
he
game changer for him.
Yes.
Wow. That's
And then after we went, Rock had been pulled from the field just before we hit the Renegade Woods. And we took such a beating, our platoon took such a beating, we lost close to half of the platoon in the initial ambush.
And we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. So I'll have you save your thoughts on that. So you graduate from AIT. Did the folks come for graduation, or do you remember?
No,
Okay. And
It
then
was-
did you have a little time off then before
I
you
had a whole 10 days.
Oh, so you got a 10-day leave basically.
Yeah,
And what
and-
did you do at that time?
Well, I was married at the time, and I had been married since 1968. I got married in
Okay.
68. I got married very young, and which was not unusual back in those days.
High school sweetheart or?
No, not really.
Okay.
And it, I didn't, at that time, when Johnson was president, they were giving deferments
Oh
to married
yes,
men.
yes.
And, of course, when I got drafted, he wasn't
No.
there anymore. And,
Well, they dropped a lot of deferments. Yep.
and anyway, I had a pregnant wife by then, and in fact, my oldest boy was born in Fort Ord.
Oh my goodness.
My wife had come out and was living off post.
And what's your son's name?
Sean.
Sean. Okay. So
And-
she was living on post.
No, she was living off post.
Oh, okay.
Yes, she was living off post with another girl from Texas.
Okay.
And her husband and I we went to basic together, and we went to AIT together.
What are the chances of that?
Yeah, and then he went to shake and bake school, and I said, no, I don't want to go to shake and bake school. I want to go ahead and get this over
Yeah,
with.
that was my attitude too.
And I did not go to NCO school there. I went to NCO school in Vietnam.
Of course, yeah.
And, but anyway, I didn't go there, and anyway, I was going to drive her home. Well, of course, we got out of AIT the day before Thanksgiving, and that was the Thanksgiving that year was 27th of November.
Mhm.
I can remember that because that's my
Sure.
son's birthday.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
And all. And I took a brand new born and wife and the little that we had and loaded them up in a 1969 Camaro and drove them from Monterey, California, back to Round Mountain, Texas. That's what I did on my 10 days off. So,
So, you know, not many of the guys were married before they went in.
no.
Was it tough, kind of? I mean,
Well,
especially because of the baby, I'm assuming.
yeah, well, it actually started the end of my first marriage.
So you think the whole military, Vietnam?
Well, I got a Dear John letter while I was in the field in Vietnam.
I think it was Dear Jim.
Well, yeah, but anyway.
Now, it wasn't because Jody had your Camaro and your wife, was it?
Well, yeah, kind of, sort of.
Oh, no.
One of those kind of things. But anyway, I got.
Do you remember how we used to kid about that in Vietnam?
Oh, but it happened.
Oh, you
It
bet it
happened
did.
a bunch. And of course, I got the letter that it wasn't fair to her and all because I was gone and she was young, you know.
Young. And I had 90% of it, I'm sure.
And anyway, it tore me up pretty bad.
Did you get a divorce through the mail?
No, I didn't. In fact, I came home and decided that I was going to make this work.
Yeah, okay.
And so I tried. We had one more boy, and of course I went into law enforcement after I came home, and then I I bounced along, and I stayed in that marriage 18 years, trying,
Oh, yes, yeah.
and
And of course the kids
Well,
were
I-
growing
I-
up and
I lied to myself though, and said I was staying for the kids. Well, I finally made myself a promise that the next time I was shown the door, I was going to go out the door and I wasn't coming
Yeah,
back.
yeah.
And that did happen, and I did
didn't
not
come
come
back.
back.
Yeah.
And it cost me both of my boys because then I was the sorriest that
Sure.
ever walked the face of the earth. But of course, she also didn't remember that 3 days after I got home, Jody actually showed up at my door. And she tried to pass him off as a long-lost cousin. Well, let's face it, I was born during the day, but it wasn't yesterday, you know, so anyway.
Did that cause a little ruckus?
Well, no, I actually think I handled it very well.
Yeah, yeah. You know, coming back from Vietnam, I'm proud of you because that could have went another
It
way.
could have gone south in a hurry.
Well, he didn't pull the trigger, but he did put the pistol in the guy's mouth. So it's unfortunate for him.
Only once. And it was down around the tonsils, I think. But anyway, that cost me my first marriage. And I turned around and married another lady that is the love of my life. And she was also a police officer, which was a big benefit.
Gosh, I should say.
You know, because we were both working the street and we could kind of deprogram each other pretty well.
Mhm.
And it worked out very well. And we've been married 32 years now, so.
Now, after the first marriage, you know, when you met your wife now, did you like fall in love, or was it a little different?
Well,
Were
no,
you willing to
there-
put, were
there
you
was
putting
a-
yourself out there?
I don't know whether I was putting myself out there or not. I just I liked the lady. I liked the way she carried herself and presented herself. And it just snowballed from there.
Yeah, good. So now we're gonna take you to Oakland, California, and you're gonna get on an airplane and you're gonna go to Southeast Asia.
Oh, yeah.
And so you get on a plane and it takes off. What are you thinking?
Well, I had no idea what I was going into, but of course you've got, 17 hours to think about it. And we took the northern route. We went through Anchorage, Alaska.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And when we flew into Anchorage to refuel, the snow drifts were higher than the plane on the runways. And we were in jungle fatigues and had no field jackets. And we had to, they made us disembark the aircraft, and we had to go down the stairs, the deals that you go down nowadays, they didn't have.
Where did you say you took AIT?
I took AIT at Fort Ord.
Oh, that you said that, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
At least it was cold up there, so you weren't too shocked.
Yeah.
If you'd have been at Bliss or
Yeah.
or Benning,
Well,
or,
I came from Bliss to Ord, with no time off.
oh my gosh.
But anyway, we had to walk to the terminal and back to the aircraft in the cold, and then we flew from there to Yoshika, Japan, and there was snow on the ground when we got there, and we left there and flew on in to Benoit, and of course, as we are making our approach, the hair on your neck's already standing up. You're going, are they going to be mortaring us when we come in? You know.
Did you notice that it was pretty quiet on that?
Oh, it was drop a pin and quiet, because everybody was trying to see out the windows to see what they could see. Of course, there wasn't much to see.
Sure.
And this was 5-something in the morning when we came in. And I'll never forget when they opened the door and we started disembarking. My first taste of Vietnam, I got hit right in the face by the 90% humidity and the fragrant aroma of burning.
Vietnam.
Welcome to Vietnam. You know.
And I have to tell you, without, to a man, everybody remembers that. I mean, every single person, when the door opened, they started sweating.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, almost instantly.
Oh, yes.
And then the smell that hit them when they went out.
Yeah.
So from there, they took you to Long Binh.
Went to Long Binh, and from Long Binh I went to Cu Chi.
Okay. What about Long Binh? What did you have to? You got processed in.
Yeah.
And then did you have to wait a couple of days to get your orders?
No, they already, the 25th was meeting people.
So you didn't have to wait around?
No, I didn't have to wait around. They took, and all of us that were to the 25th, they put on douche knives.
Yes.
And took us to Cu Chi and broke us down into the companies that we were going to. And of course, then you had the in-country orientation.
Let's go back to the truck ride. Did you guys, even collectively, sitting in the back of that deuce and a half, think it was strange that you were going to be traveling through Vietnam and villages and different things to get to Cu Chi and nobody had a rifle?
Yeah, I did. And it was even worse when I left Cu Chi going back. And you could tell the combat people
Oh, sure.
and the clerk typists, because the douche and a halves that we rode from Cu Chi back were open.
Oh,
Didn't even have
wow.
the canvas
cover.
top.
Yeah.
Yes, and the combat people sat on the floor between the seats, and the others sat on the
For heaven,
seats.
what an observation. I mean, that's interesting.
You know, and you could pick them just easily.
Sure. Well,
know.
and I remember when we disembarked at Benoit, there was a whole bunch of guys lined up. They were going to be getting on and going home, and I remember kind of walking past them, and they had a look about them that I knew instinctively. What I thought is something bad happened here. Just from the look on there, I thought this is not probably a good deal. And of course, that just raised the anxiety level and, and fear and so forth. So when you get to the company area, did you have the company clerk come out and say, okay, I'm going to tell you where to go or what to do? And
Well, I don't remember exactly who welcomed us into the company at that time, because everybody was in the field.
Yep.
And just us.
So basically, you had supply and you had a mess tent and you had a company.
We didn't have a mess tent.
A Quonset hut. Remember,
We had
that
a
was
Quonset
that
hut,
was
yes.
the company.
Yeah. And
So, needless to say, you got some gear. They sent you over there, and
they issued you your weapons and stuff like that in the company area. And then the next day, we started this orientation school.
that was called finishing school.
Oh, yeah, well, I'm sure that it finished some folks, but
And
it just
again-
rang.
And again, things you remember. Did you think it odd that you were allowed to have an M16, but they wouldn't let you have any bullets?
Yeah. Well, I didn't have an M16. In fact, in my entire time in country, I carried an M16 3 days.
Oh, and then somebody talked you out of it for a duper?
I actually started with a duper,
Yeah.
with an M79, and I liked it.
Yeah.
And I got good with it, and I was quite comfortable.
How much weight were you carrying in the rucksack?
I was carrying 100 rounds HE, and
Well, that's
Five-
50 pounds right there.
five parachute flares, star clusters, a little bit of CS, and carried no canister rounds whatsoever, and 2 claymores, and 6 fragmentation grenades. I finally got up 75 to 100 pound
Yeah.
rucksack.
Yeah.
Whatever sea rations, and of course the only creature comfort that I had was a poncho liner.
Oh, yes.
No
That-
poncho because it made too much noise.
Yeah. You know how you see kids with their little toys or their little blankets? That was our,
Oh,
that
yeah,
was our
that-
comfort.
You
That
could
was-
you could wrap up in that thing, and make sure that there wasn't an opening anywhere,
Yeah.
and then hear the mosquitoes popping, it bouncing off of it. Sound like rain
Yeah.
on it.
So where was Charlie Company when you went to meet
Harris.
to join them?
I first went to Harris.
Okay.
Firebase Harris. We were only there for a short time before we moved from Harris. We went to Kotrick.
Do you remember who you first met at Harris?
Yost, I'm gonna say Yost and probably Rock,
Okay.
and
Were there more than just yourself that was going in as a replacement?
I don't remember who all came in, but I think there were more than just me.
Sure.
And anyway, I remember them, and I remember Harris because I remember the dusters that sat in the corners of Harris.
Those were awesome.
Yes, they would bring some smoke and all, and that we pulled ambush out of there. And you remember the predominantly VC village that was out
Yep.
from there? We got in several firefights with people coming and going from that village. We got a platoon bordered real bad there.
Do you remember the first time you shot that duper on purpose?
It was about 2 or 3 days after I got to Harris.
So, no, I mean, you were put into it.
I was put into it, yeah. And then at Kotrick, we did pretty well on infiltration routes. We got in some small firefights and stuff like that. And of course, one of my main things to do when we popped a bush was to hang parachute flares so you could see.
You bet.
You know, and after I hung about 2 parachute flares, then I'd go back to HE
Yeah.
and do that kind of thing. Of course, we worked off the PBRs down there on the river. And
What did you think about that?
I liked that. I really did.
Now, when you worked with them, were they going down the river trying to get shot at, and then if they got shot at, they'd point the boat in and you guys would jump off?
Well, we did that, but we also got to where we would pull ambush off the PBRs. And what we would do, we'd pull out in the middle of the river and tie the lead boat to the rear boat and float down it, and they'd run their radar.
Interesting.
And if they picked up movement
Uh-huh.
or something, then they would insert us and we would pop a bush on it.
Wow.
And that worked quite well until we killed the 5 water buffalo. And that kind of made the old man mad. He
Yeah.
wasn't
Well,
real
that cost him
happy.
$500 a piece.
Yeah.
So,
Well, we had a fairly new lieutenant, and you know, a new lieutenant with a starlight and a map is very dangerous.
yes. Do you remember his name?
No, I don't.
Okay.
And anyway, they picked up movement, inserted us. We fell out on the berm there, and he picked up the starlight. Well, he made a quick, like that, saw movement. We popped
Oh,
the bush.
wow.
Only problem was it was water buffalo.
Wow. So you guys worked a lot up around the Cambodian border.
Yes, the Angel's Wing, we spent a lot of time on. We pulled a lot of blocking forces. When we were at Kotrick, we had a company of Arvins in there with us, which was nobody liked that.
Exactly.
And we every once in a while we would have to pull eagle flights with the Arvins, and one time we were out, and just my platoon was the only GIs with this bunch of Arvins, and they came in. We went ahead and made an insertion. We're going to make a sweep and all, and we had just started the sweep when they called us to hit an LZ, and all that the birds were coming back in to pick us up.
Well, that didn't.
Oh, it made the hair stand
Yeah,
up.
something was not
You
right
know.
there.
So we did, and the birds came in and picked us up. Well, they flew us into a little fire base somewhere that had a chopper pad, and I don't know where it was.
Would it have been a little hard spot someplace?
Yeah, so it was, you know, and when we came in on the chopper pad, there were pallets of ammunition sitting on the side of the chopper pad. And of course, the bells and whistles go off. Uh-oh, look at all that ammo. And after we got off of the choppers, we were told to break down some ammunition and take on more ammunition. And come to find out, there was armed Marines had made a sweep and run into a bunch of NVA.
So you were going to go back
And we were going to rescue
that's, yeah.
them. Well, when it came time to boarding the choppers, the Arvins refused to board the choppers. And they sent my platoon to rescue them.
Very short-handed.
Yeah,
Wow.
31 of us.
Wow.
And
Well, the problem I had when we didn't have to work with them very often, but when we did, we were working around the Iron Triangle and the Hobo
Well,
Woods,
then-
and so pretty dense greenery there. My problem is you'd go in and they'd all be there and then they'd disappear.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, literally.
Yeah.
They would disappear and you'd go, wait a minute, they're not moving with us.
Mm-hmm.
And so you immediately wanted to know, what are they doing?
Yeah.
You know, and then, and another thing that always used to get me is we'd stop for, a 10-minute break and
Go to cooking.
they'd not pots and pans banging around and you're right in the middle of a jungle.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think I found out later that the Arvins and the BC had a little deal going.
They let them know where they were and they
don't-
moved.
and they don't, you don't mess with us and we don't mess with you. I think that's probably true.
Well, it got to the point they were shooting at birds with their M16s.
Yeah.
Scared me to death.
Yeah.
I mean, you're humping and you hear, and everybody's down on the ground, and it was them shooting at birds.
Yep. Yeah, that was an interesting experience. Did you ever get to spend the night in an Arvin compound?
No, I did not, and no, I did not miss anything.
Yes. So I'm going to take you backwards a little bit. What was it like the very first time you left the wire at night on an ambush patrol?
Well, I didn't know exactly what to expect, and of course, you're stepping about that high because first thing you don't want to do is trip
Yep.
something, and you can't see. You can barely see the guy in front of you, and as tall as I was, they picked me as the pace man, and I had to pace every place that we went.
So you're trying to do that and trying to look
Watch
and yeah.
everything. But invariably, I was the pace man because I took the longest stride
Sure.
of everybody.
And when you got to the ambush site, did a sergeant or a lieutenant set people up where they wanted them?
Well, we were pretty good about knowing kind of where we wanted to be. We set up in an L-shaped ambush
Yep.
most of the time.
We did too.
And we always put a 60 in the corner of it,
Yep.
and stuff like that.
And a little rear security and
And so it was pretty much an unsaid thing, especially after you'd been there a month or two.
Yeah.
You had picked up
yeah.
stuff, and
So you mentioned earlier your job on an ambush when it was popped was to get flares in the air.
yeah.
You didn't know that the first ambush patrol
No.
you went. So when did somebody?
Well, they had told me
Oh,
that I needed.
They did. Okay,
needed
so
to
at least
get some
they gave,
illumination.
at least they gave you some instruction.
Yeah. Mhm.
So that would happen.
Yes.
And by the way, I carried the duper the first couple of months I was in Vietnam, and shooting HE in the night is a very interesting
Yeah.
job to have. I'll tell you.
Mhm.
When is the first time that when you were out with the guys? When was the first time somebody got hurt?
Oh Lord. I guess first time was at Kotrick, and our own 81s bordered us. They plotted an HI where our ambush site was.
Oh wow! Somebody didn't communicate there.
No, and they dropped 3 rounds of HE just outside the berm that we were set
Oh,
up behind.
And that could have been worse.
Yes. Could
So
have.
somebody got a piece of that?
Yeah.
Do you remember who it was?
No, I don't, but I just remember we had to dust one off out of there.
And so now you've experienced something different. Now you've experienced an explosive device.
Oh, yeah. We also learned real quick, don't call your 81s.
Yeah.
Get something from somewhere else.
Yeah, but I say that, and we're laughing about it now.
It wasn't funny
There
then.
was like nothing in the world that could have prepared us to have artillery round go off in front of you like that. Nothing.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
and especially because you heard it coming in,
Mm-hmm.
and you instinctively knew this was not
Good.
going to be a good thing. Sure.
No.
And so, when was the first time that one of the guys that you were with actually got killed?
The first time that I had somebody killed was actually in the Renegades.
Okay. And
Yeah.
describe, well, if we're going to talk about the Renegade Woods, I want you to start a couple of days before.
We were on a blocking force over on right. I guess hell, I can't even tell you which direction from the Renegades, but there was a big bunch of hedgerow country in there. The Arvin Rangers had pushed a bunch of NVA back in there, and they were going to make a sweep.
So you knew at that point there were
Bad guys
Yeah,
around, and so they set us up on a blocking force, and that we set on blocking force all day. Nothing. We heard a little firefights going on in the woods, but nothing. We were out in the paddies, and that night they decided that we were going to pull a platoon-size ambush out in the paddies. So we went in and set up in the paddies, and there was about this much water in there, and of course we were in the water.
Yep.
Behind the berms. There was no other cover, and we got in a firefight with some NVA that night as they were coming across. And
So the ambush was set up in the right spot.
yeah, it was. The unfortunate thing, we got a guy hit and all in there, and
Do you remember who that was?
no, I don't.
Okay.
But it was, like I said, it was pretty much company size or platoon size ambush, and the clouds. You remember how the clouds would come down on the deck?
Oh yes.
Well, here we are out in the rice paddies trying to get a dust off in.
Oh,
And of course we had the strobes in the pots and all, but the dust off couldn't see them through the clouds. So I took a 79 with a parachute flare and shot it through
interesting.
the cloud cover, and that gave them a spot to
Wow.
come down.
Smart.
And we got the guy on and out of there that way. Well, we stayed in that ambush site all night. We didn't move, which we should have.
I know.
But,
Yep.
but we didn't, and as luck would have it, we didn't get in any more stuff. Well, the next morning we saddled up and went back into a blocking force, and we were sitting there, and they
And
called
the Arvin Rangers were still out there someplace?
somewhere.
Yep.
And so we were sitting there, and they called us and told us they were bringing us in some more ammunition, and we needed some after that night
Sure.
and all. But they brought in a lot more than what I was expecting, and we all broke it down and all that.
Like, did they throw a box of HE out? I mean, a whole box for you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And anyway, then they told us that we were going to go to the Renegades and make a sweep. And they saddled us up, just my platoon, and we were supposed to go in 1,500 meters, get on line and make a sweep out. And they had lost a 75th Ranger team, a 7-man team, in there the day before and hadn't heard from them. So we came in, they dropped us just outside the woods, and we humped in, and we sat down and ate chow because it was about 11 o'clock in the
Yep.
morning. And after we ate, we saddled back up, started in. Well, there was a clear cut, went down and made a 90-degree turn and went back in there, and there was a hedgerow across it. Well, we pulled in there, and there was a big clear open area right in front of us. It was clear cut. There were a few of the termite mounds,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, with one tree growing out of them like there was. And we sat down there to get a drink and all. And I thought, because we were working in 2 files, and I figured, well, what we'll do, we'll break trail around there and get back together on the back side. We had Lieutenant Davis, who was new in country, and he was having none of that. He was in too big a hurry to get in there, and we were going to get in there and
Gung-ho.
get this done. And done. Well, the first talk that he gave to the platoon was, "We're going to kill them," and I'm going, "Oh Lord, this is not good."
How long had you been in country at that point?
5 months, and you know.
So you already had plenty of experience under your belt.
Yeah.
And you, by that time, by about the 5th or 6th month, you had instinct. And you had feelings, like gut feelings and so
Yeah.
forth and so on. And this didn't ring a bell for you.
Yeah. Well, we tried to tell him, "Lieutenant, that's not the way you do it. You see all that open ground? Yeah. Well, you break trail, each file breaks trail around, and we get
Yep.
together on the back side of it where oh no, we don't have time for that." So anyway, and while we're sitting there getting a drink, there's a Charlie model gunship that's working out in there. Actually, 2 Charlie models were working out. One of them got shot out.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
So, and I mean, you can see those old big 51s going up, you know, look like they're throwing baseballs and all. And we said, "Look, the bad guys are in here somewhere,
Here.
you know, and it ain't VC with being a 51.
Yep.
And but he wouldn't hear of it. So we saddled up and started across. Well, John Rarick was the point man on the left file, which I was in the left file,
Okay.
but I don't remember whether I was 3rd or 4th in it. And Mickey Griffith was the point man on the right-hand file.
About how far away were you from each other?
About 15 or so. We were spread out,
Okay.
and all. We weren't bunched up by any means. And we went on in, and this place was, you know how sharp the corners
Oh,
can be.
sure. Oh, yes.
You know.
Yes.
Well, Mickey got right up to the corner on the right-hand side, and they popped the ambush on him. There was a light, well, I say a light, it was a heavy 30 cal sitting there on a tripod. Just picked him completely up in the air and chunked him back, because he was standing nearly on top of it.
Wow.
And there was a light 30 in the other corner there, and they just raked the files. And of course we went down, and you're getting those quick releases to get out from under that damn rucksack. Well, I didn't have to get out from under it, they shot it off and all, because I pulled the tabs and hit the ground, and it was gone. And the firefight was on.
Yep.
And we kept on shooting and all. And
Had John Rarick been shot at that point?
Oh yeah, he was
And
hit.
Did you know it?
Yeah, I saw both of them go down. I saw Mickey more than any other, because I mean, to this day I can still remember just looking like and you could see the rounds hitting him, you know. And of course that I was more focused on him, and out of peripheral, John got hit and all. And we had people down everywhere.
So,
There.
up until this point, you had experienced guys tripping booby traps. You'd had firefights where somebody got shot, maybe not killed. But all of those instances were in control. You were in control.
Here we weren't.
And my question is when you saw Griffith go down, what happened to you? What was going on in your mind?
Well,
Did you ever at one point say, this is it?
no, I wasn't going to give up. I mean, let's face it, as long as I could shoot and,
Sure.
and all, like, made me feel better.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Anyway, you know, so.
Sure.
But, you know, it takes your breath away and all. At first, it's shock. It's total shock. And then you go into the overdrive or doing things mechanically.
And there's guys screaming and
Oh
hollering.
yeah, and just rounds everywhere.
What about the medic? Did somebody say, get up there and help?
Well, no, didn't have to, because Doc was, in fact, Doc should have gotten the service cross.
What was his last name?
I don't remember, big old boy.
Okay.
Big old boy, and I don't know how many times he got shot. He actually lived, but he was shot up pretty badly and still trying to crawl
Good Lord.
to people, you know.
I'm surprised he didn't get an award for that.
And, well, what I don't understand, and Rock tried to explain it to me, how John got the service cross. When I didn't, of course, like you say, I was in a different location than people, and people, whoever put him in said he crawled around and was trying to, I didn't see that. Of course, I might have been a little busy at the moment too, but I would have thought that the medic should have gotten it. Kalele, maybe. He was the sergeant.
Okay.
He was the Hawaiian sergeant.
And what was he doing during this fight?
He was trying to encourage people to keep fighting.
Okay.
And in fact, when I saw him, he was already gray, you know, and he didn't last much longer after that.
So he carried on right to the last?
To the last. Wow. Yeah. And
what about the lieutenant?
he got hit pretty quick there.
Was he like up towards the point? Was he up front or was he back?
He was back.
Yeah.
He was back. But he got hit low, and I'm not sure exactly where. I drug several people back. In fact, I drug old Hotchkiss Lurch, is what we call him. Lurch had a foot that big.
Oh wow!
You know, he could stomp a minefield out, and all. But and he always wore his damn steel pot back on the back of his head instead of putting it.
Sure.
And he took around in steel pot, and that pot went, and he went. Well, I thought he.
You thought
dead.
it was a headshot?
Yeah, I thought he dead, and I got him by that big old foot and went to dragging him back, and all, and about halfway back to where you could get cover behind the hedgerow back there, the son of a gun come to. And I was ready to whoop his ass right there. I mean, I was hot, but here I am getting my ass shot at, getting his back, and he could get himself back there, you know.
Do you think he was knocked out?
Yes,
He
was. His chimes were rung.
Oh.
I guarantee you.
How long did this last?
8.5 hours.
Do you know that's a long?
Yeah, it's a
gunfight?
long
That's a
day.
long gunfight.
Long day. We took 4 resupplies of ammunition, and all the choppers couldn't get on the ground. They'd come in and kick it out, and we had to get to it.
And just think about it. They were under fire.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so there was some heroism going on there as well.
Well, when we finally started getting some dust offs in, they would come in, and like I said, this thing looked like an L, and they'd come in back here and sit down, get low. They'd go up and make a 90-degree turn, come down and sit down. Well, they're taking fire. We're putting
sure.
we're putting people on.
Oh, sure.
And all. They would pick up, back out, pick up and
Wow.
and
Did you see the movie We Were Soldiers?
yes, very similar thing.
You know, when you're talking about this, and then you said the amount of time, I'm thinking, I wonder if when you watched We Were Soldiers, you know, if you thought, my God, this is very accurate or similar.
Yeah, and it seemed like it just went on forever, you know. And we finally started getting some reinforcements in. Baker Company came in, and they were going to get online and charge, and they did, and got a guy killed just right off the bat.
Sure.
And
I wonder who came up with that brilliant idea.
their lieutenant, he was another West Pointer, I think, and yeah, I got one kid killed. In fact, we recovered his body the next day up there with Griff. We ended up.
So it was so hairy you couldn't even get some of these guys out.
No, when we finally broke contact, we set up right there to watch the bodies all night.
I'll be darned.
Yeah.
And we didn't pull back. We just set up. We were probably within 50 meters of all of our bodies that we didn't get out.
Yeah. So that night, when you're setting up and waiting there, was there anybody talking, or was everybody just,
It was dead silent.
nobody was saying nothing?
Well, we got, Puff came in and fired for us
Oh, that was my next question.
that night. And,
Isn't that a spectacular thing to see?
it's scary as heck.
What's Puff? What was it?
It's
Spooky.
Oh,
They called them Spooky Puff. It's I can't remember what kind of plane, but
KC-130 gunship.
and it's they have a door, and it's flying. It's all ammo
huh.
and Gatling guns,
Oh,
Six minis on the side.
and
huh.
and to see it at night, because every fifth round's the tracer,
It's
And it
solid
looks
red
like-
sheet.
waves. I mean,
Huh.
it's amazing.
Wow.
And if
Yeah.
the way they were designed, if they went down, it would be as wide as a football field and as long as they had ammo. In other
Oh.
words, every 2 inches,
That'd be a bullet.
there'd be a bullet.
And
So-
they do that at night just to keep
Yeah.
you guys from getting toasted again.
Yeah.
Huh.
And they-
And I always used to wonder, how many did they get?
I did too. The thing that got me about him, though, see, we didn't know that he was coming in, and he started shooting from behind us.
Yeah.
And
Scared the crap out of you.
well, a tracer burns out at 900 meters, and he was shooting for so high up
Oh my God.
that his tracers were burning out before they got to the ground.
So that gave you a clue.
We didn't know where the rounds were going, so we dug some holes pretty quick,
Oh yeah, I'll bet.
you know. And the
Did you get-
next morning when we went in there, it looked like a giant hailstorm
Oh,
had
my
gone through.
goodness.
There wasn't a leaf left on anything.
Did you have any Cobras show up?
Oh, we had Cobras all day.
Okay.
Cobras came in and fired for us. We had 8-inch and 175.
Did you see rounds going up towards the Cobras?
Oh yeah, a few, but not too bad. Apparently, we were doing a good enough job of keeping them busy
Yeah.
that there wasn't a whole lot of back and forth with the aircraft.
Yeah.
Of course, we had a lot of artillery coming in, and these people were in spider holes.
Yes.
And of course, we were shooting delay charges for the rounds to go into the ground and
Yeah.
go off.
Give them a headache.
And so, like I said, we we had 8-inch firing, 175s and 155s. We weren't close enough to anything for 105s to reach us, but the big guns could.
Boy, those 8-inchers are spectacular.
204 pounds of explosive.
Unbelievable.
Is what the round was.
And you know, because I was there, not at Renegade, but I was in very similar situations. After a while, the explosions, the
Yeah.
sounds,
Well,
it just,
another day, you know, you hear that round come.
yeah, oh
That's
yeah.
all.
And only a guy that's been there knows exactly what you're talking about.
You know, you can hear the round coming, and you can hear it come over, and every once in a while you can see one.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
And then you hear it hit the dirt, and it'll just go thunk.
Do you think that Artillery FO was in a loach somewhere calling in that stuff?
No, well, they may have been.
I mean, was your platoon calling in artillery at that point?
We had some. We first started calling in our own, and then it shifted. And what was behind me, I never saw or never knew.
But you knew that you were in the front.
I was.
No. I mean, you guys knew.
Yeah.
I mean, all of you knew. There's guys behind us, but we're
Yeah.
it. We're out
Yes,
here.
we're the ones that are out there. You know, I lost a good friend in the Renegades, an old boy by the name of Rios, and he was a well, I won't call him an illegal. He was not a citizen.
But he joined the
But
army.
he joined to get citizenship.
Yes.
And he was a 60 gunner in there, and they killed him and took his 60. He got out on a flank there. His AG and ammo bearer stayed in a bomb crater, and he ran out of ammo. So they didn't stay with our platoon after that. They figured it might be more healthy
Oh,
to
I
go
know.
somewhere else.
You know, I was telling somebody, I can't remember exactly what interview, but there were more instances of guys being transferred to other companies, not platoons. They got them out of the company.
Oh, well, these left the company.
Because there would be more problems. You know, I don't know how
Well,
to describe it, but it would have not have been a good deal.
we held kind of a little kangaroo court and all, and explained to them that it might be healthier if they tried to get the heck out of there, because probably the next ambush they might be casualties of.
Yeah.
So
what do you remember? When did things finally settle down? I mean, and when did they finally get you guys out of there?
we actually spent the first night there watching the bodies and all. And the next morning, when it started coming daylight, they brought some Eagle flights in. But they made what was left of my platoon make the sweep.
Oh, I know.
And we were so beat up, you know. I don't know how we did it, but we did it.
Yeah. Well, and what's going through your mind at that point is I've survived the worst gunfight of my life and probably anybody else's life.
Yeah.
We've lost all these guys, and now they're going to have us go in there as if to say, they're going to make us get it. And you know, there's that feeling of, man, I don't feel good about this.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to describe it,
Yeah.
but I mean,
You don't feel good about it, and you wonder who is making this decision, you know. And of course, when we made our sweep and all, well, they at least let us stop where our bodies were and recover
Yep.
them. And we didn't have to go further in at that time. Now,
and was there still gunfights going on?
No,
So it was pretty
during
quiet.
during the night, this was a battalion base camp, NVA.
Oh my.
And anyway,
And they must have been dug in fortified bunkers and stuff.
Oh, yes.
And I've always asked this to the guys that were there, why couldn't a helicopter or anybody flying over see?
because it was double canopy.
Oh, so, and plus they were all dug in.
Yes, it was double canopy, and what started the whole mess was when they put that ranger team in there, and they let the ranger team get on the ground, and they set them down right in the middle of their base camp, and they chewed them up.
Did you ever hear hide nor hair of them again?
We actually recovered the bodies, and I found one guy alive in one bomb crater. Let me tell you the strange thing about this, how things work and all. This old boy was shot up pretty badly, and I put him on the dust off there in the Renegades. Never saw him again, never thought about him again. Just never crossed your mind,
Yep.
you know, just another body you put on a chopper.
Sure.
And I'm sitting in recruiting at the Austin Police Department and waiting for my cadet class to be formed to go to, and an old boy walks in, and all in uniform, greens and all, 25th Infantry patch with a ranger tab. Well, I looked at him and I said, he looks familiar.
Couldn't quite
I
place
don't,
it.
well, I don't have any idea where from, but he looks familiar. Well, he looked at me and he looks familiar. Come to find out, this is the guy that I put on the helicopter in the Renegades.
Unbelievable.
Ended up being in my academy class. Now he didn't last long as a police officer. He just wasn't cut out to be one. But I thought that
What
was,
are the chances?
yes, of that. It
Wow.
just unbelievable.
So where did you go when you left the woods?
They actually flew us back to Cochise to
Regroup?
regroup, and most of us had lost everything that we had, except for our weapons and what ammunition that we had. I had to go back to Cochise to get my rucksack. They had taken and piled all of our stuff up and thrown it on a helicopter.
My, oh my. Oh.
And flew it back there.
What a picture you're
and-
describing. That's just unbelievable.
They took it, and you know, remember the board sidewalks?
Oh yeah, sure.
You
Oh
know,
yeah.
well, they just laid it out on those board sidewalks. Well, they flew us back into Cochise, and the first thing that we saw when we got to the company area is all of our mangled up equipment there to try to put back together. And they gave us one day stand down and sent us back to the field.
Did they give you a steak?
No. But anyway, they gave us.
So did you go back to Kotrick?
No, in fact, by that time, by April, we were working loggers all together. We had no more wire. We lived in the field completely with no wire at all.
How long did it take before you guys got replacements?
They brought us a few replacements.
Because you were short. I mean, you guys were
Well,
just.
there was 15 of us.
That's what I'm saying. You guys probably shouldn't have even fielded a team out here. You couldn't even go.
But we went back to the field.
No,
So-
but I'm just saying, you wouldn't have enough guys to
No.
operate.
No, we could pull a halfway ambush if it was a very small,
Yeah.
and where your likelihood was maybe getting in on a bunch of VC, you know, where 3 to 5 person
Sure.
kind of thing. But a point element to something else, you don't have any business messing with.
Yep.
And rock, they I don't agree with what they did to Rock. And it really, it has affected him the rest of his life and all. But Rock was in the rear getting ready to go home. And they had just pulled him off the line.
Was it go home or R&R or?
No.
So he was about ready.
He was
done.
at the end of his tour.
Oh, okay.
And all. I think they pulled him off the line maybe 30 days or something prior.
Which was pretty common.
Yeah, prior to going. But anyway, he had only been off just maybe a week off the line. And they came and got him and saddled him up again, flew him to Tainan, and he had to identify all of our bodies there by himself. And he, to this day, he may not tell you. You may have to push him and all, but he says, I'll never forget the smell in that Connacht, you know. And he, to this day, I think it just, every year when the time rolls around.
Yeah. We had a company clerk that was always the guy that had to go identify the bodies, and he pretty much had this, and he lives with that today.
Mhm.
I mean, all these years later.
Yeah,
You know,
well,
so did you guys have any major action after Renegade?
no.
I mean, as long as you were there.
We actually went to Cambodia. We made the push into Cambodia. They actually flew us from Cu Chi up to the Parrots Beak.
Mhm.
And we went in from the Parrots Beak. And I think we stayed 2 weeks or something like that. We were in a firefight every day that we were in there, and some of the most intense close quarter stuff was in Cambodia. In fact, there were several times that it got down almost hand to
Oh my
hand,
gosh.
and then there was one platoon that actually had some hand-to-hand combat and all, machetes and steel pots. And I don't know, did you ever go into Cambodia and see the Ho Chi Minh Trail?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we went in with a Green Beret, an E7, and a bunch of mountain yards.
Mm.
And it was just our platoon alone, and we went pretty far in. They told us they were looking for an underground hospital. Later, after 40 years, Sergeant Glover, who was in charge of that operation, told us, you know those blackbirds that take pictures? One of them had went down.
And they were looking for...
They wanted to destroy it. I mean, anything usable, they want that. They were panicked.
Yeah.
And so that's why they put us in there so quickly.
Oh, yeah.
We didn't have time to think. I did learn one thing though, mountain yards,
good
you know,
troops.
They're mercenaries. But this E7, the first thing he said to us before we went in, and he said, I just want you guys to know this is my backyard. And he goes, so you're gonna be fine.
Yeah.
And he goes, when we get at night, he goes, you guys do nothing. These yards are gonna put up booby traps, they're gonna put up all kinds of stuff, and they'll be up all night watching. And by God, I couldn't believe it. And they even put up mosquito netting for us. I'd never slept under a mosquito net, but he was exactly right. And what he was looking for, besides this deal, is he'd had some problems. There was, you know, those little canals that are about this one.
Yeah.
There was an old papasan on a sampan with a 51 that would go up and down, and if there was any movement, he'd crank off. And so he'd been looking for him for a while. And the first night out, we got him. So that was, and you know, the next morning walking by and seeing him and the 51, it was just. Wow, what a wake-up call that was.
But no thermite grenade on the 51.
No. And so anyway, now it's your turn to come home. You get on the Freedom Bird.
Well, actually, I was still in the field, and all, and they brought my orders out, and I was supposed to left that day, and I got back in, cleared the base camp in one day.
Oh,
I mean, I hauled Heine around there to clear it.
yeah,
The next day I got on the truck to go to Long Bend,
yeah,
and all, and you know how you had to muster into a company to
Yeah.
muster out of the country
Yep,
and all
yep,
that.
yep.
Well, first thing that happened and all was the ride down there, like I was saying, the clerk typist and all were our cannon fodder, and
yep.
we were down in the bottom of the truck. And when we got there, and of course unloaded, they put us into a platoon to get processed through. Well, there were some E7s down there that were total toward people coming out.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing, of course, your hair's too long.
Oh, no.
So they pull you out of line so you can't get in there and send you to the barber shop. Well, you get a haircut. You come back and you get in line, start through again, and your hair's not short enough. Well, I finally had white walls done and finally got in.
Boy, what a jerk.
But then you remember when you finally did come up to muster on a flight,
Yes.
and they moved you into that Quonset hut, which you never went out of again until you got on the bus to go to the plane.
Right.
And first thing was the table, you know, where all of your stuff is poured out on the table.
Make sure you're not taking an AK broken down.
And they go through your stuff and all, and anything that they like as a souvenir, they take. I had a 50 cal round, just a ball round. It had been fired. I actually picked it up in the Michelin
Yeah, rubber
plantation.
Yep.
It's just laying on the ground. It's fired. And I picked it up, put it in my pocket,
Sure.
you know. Well, they took that. They took my steel pot. I had taken a round off a steel pot, just deflected one, and they took my steel pot. I guess that's all that they got from me. But I thought, you know, that's not right. But anyway, put all your stuff back in your duffel bag and all, and wait to board the way you change currency. Your military pay, you turn back into U.S. dollars.
Yep.
And then you got there and sat and waited for the bus and all. I thought it was always strange, and it probably wasn't. It's probably thought out pretty well. When you went over, you flew commercial airline, right? You notice that the stewardess were younger and
Oh, of
and all
course.
that.
Oh, sure.
Did you notice what they looked like when you came home?
Sure.
They were 50 years
But
old.
they were very seasoned.
And all.
Yeah.
And I can, of course, having flown with a bunch of GIs and all, I can understand why that it's
Sure.
like that. I had a guy on my flight home. And you know, you're stuck to that seat for so long. And this old boy walked the aisle of the plane. He'd walk up and down, up and down, up and down. They'd make him sit down, his ass would hit the seat, and he was up and down. And of course, we're all going, that sucker's on something.
Oh, yeah.
He's
something not
well
right.
tight.
Yep.
Well, when we came into Travis Air Force Base, well, they had an ambulance and EMTs waiting
Oh,
on him.
for heaven's sake.
And he had been popping speed all the way home. We had already, it had kind of gone around a bunch of combat vets that if he kept us from exiting the plane, we were going to give him to the MPs, but we weren't going to use the stairs to hand him down.
Yep.
On. But they came right up, took him, and we were able to get off. I went back to Oakland. You know, you had to get a new green uniform before they'd let
Yep.
you go to the airport to go home.
Yep.
Well, we did all of that. I had an old boy that came home with me that happened to be from Smithville, which is just down southeast of Austin. An old boy by the name of Danny Ryan. Now, why you remember his name, I'll never.
I'll be darned.
But anyway, Danny and I flew back together, and we were going to come back. We had to fly into Austin because that's the closest airport we could get to anyway. So we got a cab when we got our uniforms and got out, and it took us to over to, of all places, the San Francisco airport to fly out. When we pulled up there and got out of the cab, there were a bunch of the long-haired hippies there. And the first thing that happened is they spit on us and called us baby killers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that Danny and I showed tremendous restraint, because the first thought that came to my mind was getting me a handful of hair and polishing the sidewalk with the rest of it, you know. But we didn't do that. All we did, we went in, we got our tickets, we went to the bar, and we stayed there until they called our flight and came home. But that was pretty much it.
Yeah. I want to ask you something. What does, in your opinion, what's the definition of a hero?
Somebody that goes way beyond what the normal person would do, that puts himself after his comrades, his buddies, his brothers, and all, that's willing to sacrifice for them. And he probably never thinks about it when he's doing it. You know, he sees something that needs to be righted or needs help or needs something, and he goes and does it. He doesn't go, hey, y'all watch me, I'm gonna do this, you know.
So you'd say that you served with some heroes?
Oh yeah, I served with a lot of heroes.
And what does the American flag mean to you?
The world. I mean, I served under it. I salute it. I stand for it. I stand for a lot of guys that can't stand. And you want to get my dander up? Take a knee.
Dallas Cowboys?
Even the Cowboys, if they
Now,
take a knee,
now I'm touching pretty close to home here.
I don't care.
No,
if they don't.
And do you think, like in Dallas and so forth, do you think there's an air of disgust? I mean, do most people look at that and just go, this shouldn't be happening?
Yes, a tremendous number of people do
Yeah.
that. But the news keeps it out there, and they're doing just what these football players want them to do.
Of course, yeah.
They're getting their 15 minutes of glory, except it's going on and on and on and on.
Yep.
You know, that just is not right.
Yeah.
And what's bad about it is the ones that are doing the kneeling never protected that flag.
Oh, of course.
Period.
Now, how many grandkids did you say you have?
I have to count. It's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 grandkids, 2 great grandkids.
Okay. And what I'd like you to do is I'd like to have you look right in the camera, and I would like to have you give not only those grandkids, but their kids, that's going to be another generation, and another generation. I want you to look in that camera and give them your best advice.
Whatever you do, be true to yourself and take care of this country. You'll never have another one that's better.
Okay, and last question, what does your wife mean to you?
She's another one of them that means the world to me. You know, I mean, we've been through thick and thin, and she's always been there. And just like one of your buddies in Vietnam, you don't have to turn around to look to see if she's behind you.
Yeah, I know, myself included, I had multiple marriages and so forth. And my first two wives didn't know what I'd gone through. And,
Yeah.
and of course, Laura, my wife now, she's been so involved with the Wolfhounds
Oh, yeah.
and everything. But I've often told people she saved me.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Oh,
after,
yeah.
after two horrible,
Yep.
you know, deals.
Well, Eileen, she actually, her daddy was a lifer. He retired from the Army. And of course, being a military brat, she was around it a lot. Her daddy served in World War II and in Korea. So she, you know, that it wasn't unusual for her, and she was very good at it. And that's just the way it is.
Yeah. Well, Jim, I want to thank you for investing your time to come and be with us. Thank you for being there for the guys.
Well,
You know, and we were there for each other, you know.
Yes.
And, but you have a tremendous story. And not only is your family and all that, people are gonna look at this and they're gonna understand
Yeah.
what we were all about. So you have a very, very important story here. So thank you, my friend, and we'll be seeing you soon.
I appreciate it.
Okay.